All right, welcome to this week's Lead Loud video. My name is Richard Mulholland, and I am the founder of presentation powerhouse Missing Link. Each week, we address a burning question for something to do with presentation or entrepreneurship or the things that are going on in my head. This week is no different. The burning question this week is one that I get asked a lot by public speakers, and I get asked a lot by the customers who hire public speakers, and that is this: how much should they charge? How much should we be paying them? In this video, I'm going to answer that from a US perspective. I'll also give you the locals, South Africans perspective from that. It's quite difficult because your individual rates or nations will definitely have different pricing, but you can use this as a good basis. Then I'm going to flip it over a little bit and ask, should we be speaking for free sometimes? And I want to talk a little bit about that. So stick with me. I hope you're going to find this valuable. The first thing to understand are a few little caveats and mistakes that people often make when they're dealing with professional speakers. The first thing I get asked is, hey, I'm only speaking to, you only be speaking for like 20 minutes. Can that be cheaper? Well, no, my friend, that will be more expensive because I've built a bunch of keynotes that are built around a full length talk. It is significantly more work for me to make that shorter. I have to keep all the good bits in and all the magic in because you want all the value, but you only want me on stage for 20 minutes. Also, the prep time, flying there, getting there, all of those things, that all still comes into play. So it's really, really not saving any time at the end. It's adding a significant amount. I think it was Churchill or Woodrow Wilson, depending on who you listen to, that said, if I'm to deliver a speech for 10 minutes, I need a week to prepare. If I'm to deliver for 20 minutes, I need 2 or 3 days. But if I'm to deliver for an hour, I'm ready now. And that's kind of true because it's easy to just show up and throw up and ramble on, right? So that's the first thing. The second mistake that people often make when asking to book speakers is, but I'm only speaking to a small amount of people. It's only like 10 of us. Are you going to be cheaper? Now, of course, it's not going to be cheaper for us because we still got to show up and do all the work and do everything, whether you have 10 people or 1,000 people. And in fact, it's in my best interest. If you have 1,000 people, that's where you're more likely to get a discount. Because when it's 1,000 people, of course, that my chance of getting more work out of your audience is significantly higher. So actually less people means that I've got less chance of doing more work, and it's still the same amount of time. The slight caveat to that, and of course, every event is different, is that some small events are with very, very big key executives, and it's worth my while to show up and do that work. So you're going to have to gauge that on a case-by-case basis. Now, there's a couple of sources I went to find this information for you. I'm going to include links to everything in the description on YouTube. So if you're watching elsewhere, please go over to YouTube and you'll find links to all the posts where I found with these salary bands. As I'm recording this, it is May of 2021. So please bear into mind that things are always subject to change, the crazy world we live in. In fact, today, crypto just went crazy. And so depending on if you're spending dollars or crypto, these rates would be very, very different. For my first source, I want to go to Meetings or Smart Meetings magazine, where a survey was done of meeting planners, where they asked them, based on the fee structure that a professional speaker or a speaker is giving you, what are your perceptions of that speaker? And I thought their perceptions are very interesting, and this gives you a good point to start off. So if they're unpaid, well, they're just mediocre or just starting out. There's a little bit of a buyer beware there for some unpaid gigs. But again, I'll talk later on about the caveats of that. When you're willing to show up and speak for free, people assume that you're going to be selling something. Right? And in fact, I think that's true. If somebody asks me to speak for free, they better know that I'm going to be selling something, because that's the quid pro quo there, or the exchange of value. Now, if you're in that kind of $2,500 to $5,000 area, you're now moving from part-time to full-time. So this is somebody where, and in fact, I kind of think there's a sweet spot, and I often say to the speakers I work with, that $4,000 mark. That's a real sweet spot, because people kind of feel you're at the top end, but they're still getting you on sale. So it's a really, really nice place to position yourself. If you're not sure, if you're confident, you've got a nice dialed in talk and you're asked to quote, the answer may well be, $4,000. That feels like a nice fee to go in at. Once you get in that $5,000 to $10,000 mark, now you're a professional, and they believe that they're dealing with a real professional. If somebody charges this $5,000, $10,000, that is actually a guarantee of value. And this is something to understand. I learned this very, very early on. When I was charging at the beginning, my first event I charged ever was 7,500 Rand. And I charged that. And then the next gig, I was like, okay, well, that was easy. Let me just try this one at 15. And then I tried that. And I realized very quickly that the only perspective or value that the customer has to gauge off is how much I'm charging. Now, there's two sides to this. One thing for me as well is that I'll always explain to my customer what the impact of my talk should be on their business and how much that should be worth to their business. And then my fee seems comparatively small because I show the value before I, share the price. The other thing that I'll do with my customer as well, when they'll say to me, "Oh, but you charged X, this other speaker charged 50% less." I'll say, "Well, you're asking me to speak to 100 people in your organization. And you want me to move the needle of that organization. Is it really something that you want to shrimp and go with like a cheapie on for like 50% of the price?" And they're like, no, you're right. So for them, they feel that cheap is bad in this instance. And again, when you consider what we're actually trying to do, move human beings to do something different, the value should be high. Anyway, professionals in this space, if you're kind of full-time and you're doing this work, $5,000, $10,000 is a good place. Above $10,000, well, then you're in a different category. Then you might have a TED Talk that's done really, really well, or a New York Times bestseller, or you're just famous. Once you get up to that 20,000 and above mark, you're usually sports people or very, very well-known figures. That 100K above mark, you're starting to deal with really, really, really well-known entities. People that they're like, whoa, okay, I really know this person. Very, very famous top-level speakers, A tier from there. So for most of us, that's not where we're playing and not where we're at. But this kind of 5 to 10, 10 to 20 mark feels like a good place for us to be playing. Now, one of the things that's changed a lot today is when presenting online. And at the beginning, I did a video on this, and I actually will link to it because I kind of went to war with the idea that we should be doing this for less because I'm spending money on gear and cameras and things and building a big studio upstairs. But I want to retract that point of view. You can watch it anyway, but I want to retract that point of view because it is significantly easier and better and cooler for me to present this way. And in fact, if I can do whatever I can to encourage my customers to book me this way, to do a presentation this way, it's better for me. So what I've discovered is the range seems to be a 20 to 40% discount when presenting online. You don't have to do any of that. You don't even have to agree, but it just feels like a nice place to go in there to do a bit of a deal sweetener. Let me tell you, getting on an airplane and flying to an event, halfway around the country and, all the travel, going to airports, things like this, I'm very, very happy to give this a little bit of a tax to stay in my home when presenting. Now, one other thing that I like to mention as well is going on tour, because when I present, when I'm traveling, this becomes a very, very big deal as well. And I'm able to give tour pricing. By the way, On Tour, this is a really cool board game. You should definitely check it out and consider buying it, the image I took here. So for me, these are all very, very important points that we need to consider. If you do want to do tour pricing, of course, you're going to give people a sliding scale and things like that. From a South African point of view, it's relatively easy. The average South African speaker seems to charge between 30 to 36,000 Rand. From there, the next kind of scale of very well-known speakers seems to be up to the 60,000 mark. And then there's a handful of speakers all charge 100,000. And I have it on relatively good authority that the top paid South African speaker is charging $200,000. There are not many of those, but that's kind of the scale that you're looking at going at just to figure out what the fees would be. So that's it from a local perspective. Now let's go back to the US. So how does that map out over a year? Okay, so we look at salary.com here, the numbers there, the average public speaker, the kind of median area is earning about $89,000 per year. So if you break that down into monthly, what you've got is speakers earning around about $7,500 or so. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the average speaker is doing approximately 2 gigs per month. There is such an amazing insight in this because speakers aren't spending the rest of the time sitting twiddling their thumbs. This lets you understand what the real job of a public speaker is. That is writing and preparing the content and sales, selling those gigs. Right? They're on a phone, doing hustling, sending videos, doing things, trying to book those 2 gigs to pay for their month. Right? That's how they're getting by. So a lot of work goes into this. If you think that you're going to show up, be a speaker, earn these fees, just do one of those a day, it'll be super easy, great, but you better be famous. Otherwise, you better be willing to sell or to have somebody do the sales for you. If you're going to work with an agent, they're going to take a cut. And even if they do take a cut, you've got to remove the friction for them getting you booked. So you've got to be out there in the public eye. So you've got to do all the promotion, social media, and all those other things to make yourself get out there. Make it easy for them to do that job. Now, the burning question on the other side is, should I speak for free? Should I ever speak for free? To which my answer is always the same. You have to understand, You only speak for free if you only speak for a fee, right? So if the only thing you ever do is speak for a fee, well, then you absolutely you'll be speaking for free. Because if I got $5,000 to show up and do an event, and then I didn't get that, I wouldn't get anything out of it. However, if you understand that there's a different dynamic at play here, and actually there's other ways to earn money, because you can earn money for your talk, or you can earn money from your talk, well, then everything changes. And that's what it's been for me. So I understand that I get paid for my talk, for showing up, a speaking fee, but then I get paid a different fee because I showed up as well. And actually these two things are skewed, right? So last year, I managed to make 6 figures and got paid that way from my talk, or for my talk. But actually that turned that into stage marketing for Missing Link for our business. And of course that turned into 7 figures of revenue that I got from my talk. I'll always make more money when I get off stage from people in the audience. Not always, but mostly. Most times I get off a stage and then, good things happen. So there are 3 ways that I can see that you can earn money speaking. Way number 1, you might do 20 talks for $5,000, right? And you'll make your money that way, your $100,000, and that's great. The second way that we can do it is I could do 5 talks for $20,000. Again, we have to be a New York Times bestseller or a TED speaker. The third way, and for many, many of us, entrepreneurs, business owners, people like that, who want to look at making money this way, the third way is the easiest, and that is to do 1 talk for the right audience once, and they will book your business and hire you, and great things will happen. I'm sick to death of this narrative that I hear over and over and over again. This thing when people ask you to do work for exposure, and you're like, you can't pay your bills with exposure. Lies. I did this talk on Goalcast, right? Goalcast here. 20 million people have watched this talk. Do you think, I did this talk for free, by the way. I did this talk at an event called Suits and Sneakers. There was like 4,000 people in the audience. I booked a ton of work just from that gig. 20 million people saw this video, many of whom booked me for speaking tours all over the world. Do you think that I couldn't do this? I got no value out of the exposure? Absolutely not. It did really, really well for me. You don't believe me? Ask this guy. Right? So there's my 20 million views. This guy here, Simon Sinek, 52 million views on this talk here. Start with why you've seen it. Ask him if he ever regrets showing up and doing that TED talk for free. And I'll tell you, he doesn't. And of course, that's what we have to realize here is this could be you. Who were Simon Sinek and Brené Brown before those famous talks? They were you and me. And this is our opportunity. So I just wanted to share with you some of the economics around public speaking, what you could look at earning, what you could do, what you should be charging if you're already in the space. If you would like some help with this, building your speaking engine, we do have our Story to Stage program. You just go to storytostage.co, go up there, and we'll get you all the details there. Other than that, that's it for this week. Please do not forget to drop any questions that you have that you'd like me to address about anything to do with presentation or even entrepreneurship. I'd love to address that with you as well. That's it for this week. Go out there, be a speaker, hire a speaker, just speak and lead loud. Peace.